Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in my last video, I was kind of joking about, it's the 1st of September, I'm ready for fall. This took me a little bit by surprise. I was in Hot Topic this past weekend and I found these. So these are two very, very Halloween inspired palettes. You've got No Place to Hide, which is inspired by Friday the 13th, and then you have Never Sleep Again, which is inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street. So I didn't see them in the usual like makeup area. They had them kind of on just like a little, one of the little pods that they have with just different items on it. And it kind of had like a bunch of different pop culture stuff on it, but they do have them on their website. So these palettes both retail for $16.90, but they're both on sale right now for $13, and they are only 8 shadows. So let me show you what they both look like on the inside. I am only gonna do one look with each of them, and I figured I'll go ahead and just do them both in this video because I kind of feel like they're meant to be purchased together. So this first one is the Friday the 13th themed palette, No Place to Hide. You've got Jason's mask on the front. These are what the shadows look like. And then let's see if I can show this. So this is the mirror. So it has Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake. There's a little, bloody cracked mirror mark. And then on the back, you've got Jason, and it's got a little blurb, head back to Camp Crystal Lake, that kind of fun stuff. So I will say, when I looked at this one, I don't know if it's just me, but I felt like the shades were really pretty for this being a, Friday the 13th horror movie inspired palette. I mean, I foresee me getting a very soft, pretty look out of this. It just kind of took me a little by surprise. So the other palette is the Freddy Krueger palette, the Never Sleep Again. It's got Freddy on the front. The back has a little silhouette of Freddy. Again, it has a little blurb, about Elm Street. This one opens the opposite way. So these are the colors right here. And then this is what the mirror looks like. So you've got like little claws coming out, and then you've got Elm Street at the top. I kind of originally thought that they were meant, like this one opens this way, this one opens that way, because they were meant to be sent together. But I'm kind of wondering if their thinking behind it opening the opposite way is more because of it's that whole dream basis, so everything's, you always feel like it's like a reflection. Dreams are a reflection, so maybe that's why it's opposite. Who knows? Or they were just meant to be, used together. I don't know. I do feel like the colors in this one are a bit more horror appropriate. I do feel like, you've got the colors of his sweater here. You do have some very darker colors. I don't know how well these two are gonna do, just because quite honestly, their blacks never do come off super, super black. They're always kind of grayish black, and now it looks like you're getting a gray and a black. So when I swatch them, we'll see how they turn out. So yeah, I'm gonna do the swatches real quick, and then we'll get into both looks. I'll try to make it quick so this video doesn't end up too long, and then we can do like a little recap at the end and see how both palettes performed. All right guys, so here are the swatches for the No Place to Hide Friday the 13th themed palette. We have Crystal Lake, Voorhees, Immortal, Summer Camp, Counselor. Let's see if I can do this one justice. Best name ever. This one is They Were Warned, and then Jason Lives. So only 8 shades. I will say all of these took about 3 layers for me to get a color that would show up really nicely on camera, so just keep that in mind. And here are the Never Sleep Again swatches. We have Incinerator, Elm Street, Bloodbath, Burned Alive, Don't Fall Asleep, Slash, Sweet Dreams, and Dream Realm. So just as I suspected, these two pretty much pointless. You end up having a light gray and a dark gray. All these did take some building, just like with the other palette. These two actually were a fairly nice formula. This one is really pretty, but it took some building, so we'll see how these perform on the eye. First up is No Place to Hide. I'm starting with the color Jason Lives on a fluffy brush, and I'm just using this to kind of set down any tacky primer and also just to brighten up the brow bone area. Then into the shade They Were Warned. This I'm going to start working through the crease. It's a really light shade, but it acts as a nice transition. Then into This one goes all through the crease and onto the outer portion of the eye. Next up is Summer Camp. I'm using my finger just to place this on the inner portion of the lid. I thought this worked really well. You'll see later that I'm going to fix it. And then I went into Crystal Lake again with my finger and placed this on the center of the lid. This is where things kind of started taking a turn because it wasn't grabbing quite like I thought it should. And then into Voorhees, again with my finger, and I'm placing this on the outer half, and this one really was not grabbing to my lid. This is kind of what made me realize I needed to use a wet brush. So I basically just went back into all three of those shades with a wet brush and just went over the top of them, and you can see it made a world of difference. So that would be my recommendation. Definitely use the shimmer shades in here wet. And then I took a kind of dense brush and just blended out that purple shade on the outer portion. And then of course I had to fix the other eye. Then I'm going back into Crystal Lake with a flat brush. This is a dry brush, and I'm just running this on the lower lash line about halfway and really kind of making it thick. And then with Summer Camp, I'm filling in the inner portion of the lash line and kind of overlapping in the center. Then back into with a pencil brush, I'm just running this underneath those shades. Next up is the shade Immortal. On that same detail brush, I'm just using this to highlight the inner corner. And then I'm just going to put a green liner. This is Teaspoon from ColourPop. I thought this was a nice little addition to the waterline. And then liner and lashes to complete the look. For lips, I'm using Oogie Boogie Mauve. This is from the Nightmare Before Christmas collection at Hot Topic. I thought it would be appropriate to use. And this is the finished look using the Friday the 13th themed No Place to Hide palette. And now for Never Sleep Again. I'm starting out with Sweet Dreams, basically just like I did on the other look, just setting the primer and adding a brightness to the brow bone area. Then I'm going straight into the shade Burned Alive. I'm using this on a wet flat brush, and I am just covering the entire lid with this shade. I had a lot of issues with this palette, so I found that this was just the best shade and the best way to use it. Then with Bloodbath, I'm taking this on a detailed brush, and I'm starting to focus the color directly into the crease portion, really having to go back in and layer to build it up. Then once I have that color down, I'm starting to kind of blend it upward and outward to really make that red a little bit more blurred. Then into the shade Slash, I'm using this on a flat kind of fluffy brush just to pack a little bit onto that outer corner. You can see that it really does not have a black impact. And then I'm going back over it with Burned Alive. I really just wanted to kind of darken up that outer corner a bit. Next, with a flat angled brush, I'm going into Elm Street, and I'm using this on the outer half of the lower lash line. This is a dry brush, and I'm really being kind of heavy-handed here. And then with a smaller flat angled brush that I did wet, I'm using Incinerator to just fill in the inner half of the lid, and then I'm kind of overlapping the two in the center. I did also decide to pop this on the inner corner a bit. It's not quite the tone that I was wanting though, so I dipped back into the No Place to Hide palette into that Immortal shade just because it's a nice bright white, and I feel like that helped a lot. For this look, I decided to just stick with a classic black in the waterline. I felt like that just kind of tied everything in really nicely. And then of course adding the liner and mascara. Now for lips on this one, I'm using the Storybook Cosmetics liquid lipstick in the shade Horror. I felt like I absolutely had to use this shade somewhere in one of these looks. And this is the finished look using the Nightmare on Elm Street themed Never Sleep Again palette. Alright, so this is the finished look with the Never Sleep Again palette, and you already saw the look I did with the No Place to Hide palette. So let's go ahead and recap both of these palettes and I'll give you my thoughts on them. So first off, let's talk about the first one I used, which was No Place to Hide, the Friday the 13th palette. I think that this is definitely my favorite out of the two. I got, you know, a very pretty look. I still think that's a little funny that it was such a pretty look for a horror themed palette, but I was really happy with the way that all the shadows performed. I definitely think that the shimmer shades performed much better when they were wet. I had no problem using them on the right eye, which is why I went in dry and like with my finger on the left eye, but I started noticing it wasn't grabbing in places and it was just kind of blending away, and then when I wet it, it worked just fine. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. It's on par with most of the Hot Topic palettes that I've used. I was able to get a look out of it. I could see myself getting some other looks out of it. I think simple is definitely the way to go with these types of palettes, but again, I was really happy with it, and I think the shimmer shades in that palette are really pretty and the transition shades are really easy to use. This palette, I don't like this palette. I'm not happy with this palette at all. I'm pleased with the look that I was able to get, but this is probably the fourth thing I tried. This is probably the fourth time I tried to do something. I kept having to just remove it because it was not working. Things that I thought were going to look good just didn't. The thing that disappoints me the most is by looking at this palette, and I think I even said it in the intro, was, oh, this is gonna be a darker look. It's gonna be super vampy and fun. These things are too damn sheer. These, just like I was worried about, this black isn't really black. It's almost like a really dark gray. And so this gray is an even lighter gray. You don't have the depth that you think you would have with this palette. I will say that this red is a really pretty red, but it's very sheer. And you can even kind of see that it's sheer here. I mean, the way I used it, the reason I was using this tiny little brush was because I was failing so much with the palette beforehand when I was using my regular blending brushes, so I wanted to have a lot more control and to be able to deposit the color in a more concentrated manner. So that was why I went in with that, and I think that was the best way to play it off. And also, that was also why I went ahead and laid down the lid shade first, is because out of all of the shades, this is probably the one that I'm the most happy with. It worked really nicely wet. I think it looks really gorgeous all over the lid, so I think it's a great option. You know, a lot of these shades are always gonna look pretty on the lower lash line because that's, again, a very concentrated way to put the shadow down. So the green shade I think looked beautiful on the lower lash line. And then this incinerator shade I think is a really fun little accent, but then you run into the issue where there's not really a bright highlighting shade. So I did dip back into the other palette, as you saw, just to grab that bright white for the inner corner part. And I think that just helps brighten up the look a little bit. I think that if you're gonna get this palette, the best way to use it is going to be just to use 1 or 2 shadows at a time. I think trying to create a complete look out of it isn't going to be something that you're gonna have much fun doing, because believe me, this, like I said, 4th try. So my overall opinion, if you're gonna pick up just one of them, I would go with this one right here, the No Place to Hide palette. I think that is the one where you will get the most ease of doing some looks out of, maybe get some different looks. It'll be very user-friendly, especially if you're a beginner, and it's pretty shades. I think the shades are very pretty. This palette right here, I would say I would only get if you're just a big fan of like horror films, or if you're just a big Freddy Krueger fan. So yeah, out of the 2, I would definitely go with just this one. If you're just a super big horror fan and you want to pick up both, then now you know the best way to use them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you didn't mind that I went ahead and did both palettes in one video. I kind of felt like it was 2 looks 1 palette, except for it's like 2 looks 1 horror themed palettes. And I figure if you saw these palettes online, you were probably curious about both of them. So this way you don't have to wait for the next video. You got to see how both of them performed, and this way we were able to kind of compare them to each other. So if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, and thank you guys for watching. Bye.